Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Dharna Noor in Baltimore, and welcome to another edition of the Ford Report. This week, the Senate holds their confirmation hearings for Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Neil Gorsuch. Trump has defended Gorsuch's credentials, but a new report from the NAACP's Legal Defense Fund calls his civil rights record into question. With us to discuss this is Glen Ford. Glen is joining us from Plainfield, New Jersey. He's the co-founder and executive editor of the Black Agenda Report and the author of The Big Lie, an analysis of the U.S. media coverage of the Grenada invasion. He's also a regular reporter to the Real News Network. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Glen, the findings of the LDF's report ultimately led them to oppose Gorsuch's appointment, and like many others, they've requested a delay of his confirmation hearing. They noted that Gorsuch has praised the legal philosophies of Antonin Scalia, who died last February. Gorsuch, like Scalia, embraces originalism. He believes that the Constitution should be seen as a stable document, interpreted as it was meant to be when it was written. So what's your response to his adherence to originalism?
Well, one of the reasons that the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and other civil rights advocates want this delay, and they want a delay so they can look into Gorsuch's record when he was an official in the Justice Department, is because it's sometimes difficult to pin down these originalists' positions because they really don't feel that they have to take one. It is their approach to the law that is so insidious and so destructive. So that although Gorsuch has made comments regarding gay rights and people's supposed rights to public vouchers for private schools and such, the real danger that these originalists pose is the way they interpret the Constitution. And as you said, their interpretation of the Constitution is that you should not interpret it at all, that it should be viewed the way that the founders, the writers of the Constitution, who were all white, all male, and largely slaveholders, the way they intended. So that's a very much weighted white supremacist document from the beginning. The vehicle for these originalists is the Federalist Society. And that society was founded in 1982 during the Reagan administration. And since that time, various Republican presidents have been packing the federal judiciary with these originalists, these federalists, ever since. Basically, what they do is they turn the civil rights agenda on its head by extending the right to discriminate to individuals and institutions, basically to business persons, and making it very difficult for the historical victims of discrimination to even get access to the law, to get standing in the courts. And Neil Gorsuch is a very militant Federalist practitioner of that kind of approach. He uses the narrow interpretation of the Constitution to basically negate the right to equal protection under the law. It allows him to dismiss or to limit equal protection under the law by minorities and to expand by his interpretation, which he calls not an interpretation at all, but just a view of what the founders wanted, to expand that equal protection under the law to the people who are not historic victims of discrimination. His philosophy and the philosophy of others like him is probably most dangerous when it comes to enforcing the civil rights aspects of government programs and policies. Because if you can't enforce a law, if you can't put equal protection into the law, then that law has really no effect. The executive branch is the branch that writes the regulations that makes these laws real. When laws are passed by Congress, they are typically vaguely worded, and it's up to an administration to say under what circumstances A leads to B, and then to C, to making that law something that is living and meaningful to the people who have to deal with it. But right-wing judges find ways to rule against or dismiss the executive branch's regulations that actually embody equal protection under the law. And that allows people like Gorsuch and his ilk in the federal judiciary to make civil rights practically, in a practical sense, meaningless. They are able judicially to draw lines through the law so that they're just pieces of paper. And so it's very difficult then for organizations like the NAACP Legal Defense Fund to say specifically Gorsuch made such a ruling or made such and such a statement that we can hone in on. It's the approach, the general approach that they take, which is most destructive.
What you say is true, and many, including the NAACP, have noted sort of the lack of the ability to see the record of folks like Gorsuch. But there are some specific instances that the LDF sort of refers to. As you say, they take issue with his sort of conservative opinion on the use of courtrooms. They quote him. They say that he wrote, "American liberals have used courtrooms, quote, to affect their social agenda on everything from gay marriage to assisted suicide to the use of vouchers for private school education." Despite this position and his questionable position on things like reproductive rights and LGBTQ rights, some are saying that Democrats should support him. Why do you think that is? Why are we being told that that in some cases Democrats, especially moderate Democrats, should support him?
Well, you know, the Democratic Party is not a revolutionary party. It's not even a reformist party. Some of its members like to make reformist statements, but most of the rulings that come down from the Supreme Court have to do with business practices. And Democrats are just as entwined with the U.S. corporate system as the Republicans are. And they also dread the making of new law, that is, granting of what right-wing people call new rights. And so they're not really as activist as the Republican right makes them out to be. Ironically, it is the Federalists, the originalists, who always decry the making of new law by judges who are the most active in the realm of law. But instead of making new law, they are most active in disassembling those laws that they disfavor.
Glen Ford is the executive editor of the Black Agenda Report. Glenn, stick around. We're going to pick this up in a part 2. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.